Imagine this. You step into, say, a bustling market, maybe somewhere you've never been before, and you're not just hearing noise, right? You actually understand the banter, the quick back and forth. You can maybe haggle a bit with a smile, really connect.
Yeah, that feeling of connection.
Exactly. Or picture yourself in a business meeting, maybe dealing with international colleagues, and you're switching effortlessly between languages. A second, third, maybe even a fourth language. It opens up so many doors, professionally, globally. It's really appealing, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It feels like a kind of superpower sometimes.
It really does, like this amazing gift that only a few lucky people get. You know, real talent. But what if it's not magic? What if that talent is actually just, well, a set of practices, things anyone could learn?
Now that's an interesting thought.
Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really get into fascinating topics, pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights, and tailor them just for you.
Yeah, we try to cut through the noise.
And today, we are tackling one of the big puzzles in learning: polyglots. Those incredible people who seem to just soak up languages one after another, like it's easy.
Effortless, it seems sometimes.
Right. So the big question is it innate talent, like we often think? Something in their genes they were just born with? Or is there something else going on? Something maybe more accessible?
That's the core question, isn't it? Nature versus nurture, almost.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, our main guide, our source material, is this really insightful piece called The Polyglot Path: Habits of Successful Language Learners.
Ah, I know this work. Very good stuff.
It leans heavily on the work and observations of Lýdia Machová. Now, she's not just talking about it, she is it. A renowned polyglot herself, speaks 9 languages, I think.
At least. And she's coached countless others, a real expert in the field.
And what she reveals is, well, it kind of turns everything on its head. She argues, quite strongly actually, that the secret isn't some hidden talent. It's not in the genes, it's in their habits. Distinct, repeatable, effective habits.
And that's what's so fascinating, right? Because Machová, she immediately reframes the whole conversation. She pulls us away from this idea of, oh, I'm just not good at languages, this innate ability thing.
Which is so discouraging for so many people.
Totally discouraging. And she moves us towards something much more tangible, something you can actually control, something empowering.
Okay, so that's our mission today then.
Precisely. Our mission today is to really unpack those habits. What are the 10 key behaviors, the things that really set polyglots apart? We're going to break them down, offer you practical, actionable lessons, things that anyone, and I really mean anyone who's interested in learning a language, can use, no matter your past struggles, no matter if you think you have the language gene or not.
Right. Expect some aha moments.
Hopefully. We want to give you a shortcut, really, to understanding what actually makes multilingualism possible.
Okay, let's dive right in then. You said reframing the discussion. What's the absolute biggest misconception about polyglots that this source just tackles head on? The one that changes everything?
The single biggest one.
Yeah.
The one that stops so many people even before they start. It's that belief in innate talent.
Yeah.
Period.
Ah, the language gene idea.
Exactly. This deeply ingrained idea that, some people are just language people and, well, others aren't. And Machová's work, based on tons of research, talking to polyglots all over the world, plus their own lived experiences, it just dismantles that whole notion.
So what do they replace it with?
They show us it's not magic. It's not a gift you get at birth. Language learning is a skill.
Okay, a skill, like playing the piano or carpentry.
Precisely. Think about it. Playing an instrument, mastering a craft, getting good at a sport, even coding. Nobody just picks up a violin and plays Bach perfectly first try, right?
Definitely not.
Or walks onto a tennis court and wins a grand slam. These are skills you develop. You refine them. It takes effort, consistent effort, and crucially, a method.
So the mindset shift is key.
It's everything. The moment you stop thinking, oh, I don't have the brain for it, and start thinking, okay, I can learn this if I figure out what works for me and I stick with it. Well, you've basically won half the battle right there.
That's huge.
It is. This liberating idea that it's a controllable skill, not some fixed talent you either have or don't. That's the bedrock. That's the absolute foundation of how polyglots succeed. They don't see it as some mystery mountain to climb. They see it as a craft they can learn, something they can get better at through process.
That is incredibly empowering, honestly. It just removes that huge barrier, that excuse, really, that so many of us carry around. Maybe from a bad experience in high school French or something.
Exactly. We've all been there. Struggling, feeling discouraged, thinking, guess I'm just not wired for languages. This is, no, that's not it. It makes it accessible.
Okay, so if talent isn't the key, so process is. So how
Yeah.
do they develop that process? Is there like one secret method they all use? The magic bullet we're all missing?
Not at all. And that leads us right into the second habit, which is just brilliant, really. They create their own personalized methods.
Ah, okay. So no single polyglot method.
Definitely not.
Mhm.
This is where their individuality really comes through, and it makes perfect sense if you accept that it's a skill, right? They don't just rigidly follow some textbook from page 1 to 300, or use only the trendiest app, or stick to one curriculum someone else designed.
Because what works for one person?
Might be totally boring, or ineffective, or just plain demotivating for someone else. We all learn differently.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to fit into a box that wasn't made for them, they become, well, they become researchers, designers of their own learning journey.
So they experiment.
Constantly. They tinker, they tweak, they tailor the whole process to fit their unique personality, their specific goals, we'll get to goals later, and crucially, their individual learning style, what they actually enjoy.
And that enjoyment factor must be key for sticking with it.
It's huge. Because if the learning process feels genuinely you, if it lines up with your interests and how your brain likes to work, you're just so much more likely to keep showing up day after day. Consistency comes from engagement, from enjoyment.
That makes total sense. I remember seeing some really interesting examples in the source material about these personalized approaches. What kind of things do they actually do?
Oh, some really cool and diverse stuff. For example, some polyglots might totally immerse themselves in TV shows or movies in the language they're learning.
Right, binge watching for a purpose.
Exactly. But it's not just passive watching. It's active. They might start with subtitles in their own language just to get the story, then maybe switch to subtitles in the target language.
Ah, connecting the sounds to the words.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then eventually, maybe try watching with no subtitles at all, really training their ear. They might even rewatch scenes or whole episodes, picking up on pronunciation, new words, cultural jokes, using stuff they genuinely enjoy as a core learning tool.
And it's not just movies and TV, right? There were other examples.
Definitely. The source mentions things like Anki flashcards. For anyone who doesn't know, Anki is this smart flashcard system. It uses spaced repetition, basically. An algorithm figures out the best time to show you a card again, right before you forget it.
Super efficient for vocabulary.
Incredibly efficient. It hacks your memory, essentially. So if that kind of systematic approach clicks for someone, they'll use it heavily.
And what about reading?
Then you have people who love parallel texts. Imagine reading a novel, right? On the left page, you have the original language, say Spanish. On the right page, you have the English translation.
Oh, that's clever. So you can quickly check meaning without stopping constantly.
Exactly. You grasp the context immediately, makes reading much smoother, less frustrating. You can dive into real books much earlier. The point is, it could be videos, podcasts, music, flashcards, books, talking to people.
Yeah.
The tool itself isn't the magic ingredient.
It's the alignment.
It's the alignment with the learner. What works for you? If you're visual, maybe videos are key, auditory, podcasts, kinesthetic, hands-on, maybe acting things out, journaling, using interactive exercises.
So the message for you listening is basically experiment. Don't feel locked into one method just because it's popular or someone recommended it. Try stuff out.
Dip your toes in.
Yeah. Try an app, watch a show, listen to music, try writing a bit. See what clicks for your brain, what sparks your interest, what makes you actually want to do it again tomorrow. Find your fun.
And finding your own method, being that self-director, that naturally flows into the next key habit. You start taking ownership.
Ah, yes, makes sense. If you're designing the process, you're already in charge. So, habit number 3. Polyglots are autonomous learners. They take responsibility. They don't wait around.
Precisely. They don't wait for a teacher to tell them what to do next or for a school curriculum to guide them. They are the drivers of their own learning bus.
That's a big shift from how most of us learned in school.
It's a massive shift from being a passive recipient, sitting in class, waiting for assignments, to being an active creator. They see themselves as the architect, the engineer of their own language environment. They know learning isn't confined to study time. It happens everywhere, all the time, if you're intentional about it.
And that fosters self-reliance.
Hugely. Self-reliance, proactivity, problem-solving, skills you absolutely need for the long haul, especially once you're out of a formal class setting. You basically become your own teacher, your own motivator, your own resource finder.
Okay, so what does that look like? Can you give us some concrete examples from Machova's work? How does this autonomy show up in their daily routines?
Sure. The source gives great examples. Like a polyglot might deliberately set aside, say, 30 minutes every day just to listen to a podcast in their target language, maybe on their commute or while doing chores.
Not just background noise, though.
No, active listening. Trying to catch new words, understanding the gist, getting used to the rhythm, the speed, turning dead time into learning time.
Okay, that's one way. What else?
Another big one is actively scheduling conversations. They don't just wait for an opportunity to speak to magically appear. They make it happen.
Even if they're beginners, that sounds scary.
It can be, initially, but they seek it out. Maybe they find a tutor online, use a language exchange app to find a partner, join a local conversation group. They proactively create those chances to actually use the language, which is crucial. They build their own immersion, even if it's just virtual.
So they're not waiting for the perfect immersion trip. They're building it right where they are.
Exactly. They identify opportunities everywhere, maybe changing their phone language, labeling stuff around the house, following social media accounts in that language, reading kids' books. It's about integrating it constantly in small ways.
So for you listening, the takeaway is look for those little pockets of time in your day. Your coffee break, your walk, waiting in line. Stop waiting for the perfect time or the perfect course. Start creating your own language world bit by bit right now.
And being autonomous, choosing your path, naturally leads you to think carefully about what you're learning with the materials themselves.
Yes, which connects perfectly to habit 4. They actively create or choose meaningful materials. It's not just about finding any stuff in the language, is it? It's about finding stuff that genuinely interests them.
This is so important. It taps into the emotional side of learning. Polyglots get that language isn't just grammar rules and vocab lists. It's alive. It's culture, emotion, ideas.
And if you're forcing yourself through some dry, boring textbook,
your brain just isn't as engaged. Compared to learning about something you're genuinely passionate about, is night and day. That emotional connection, that genuine interest, dramatically boosts retention. You're not just memorizing random facts, you're building rich connections in your brain. It makes the language relevant, meaningful, memorable.
So it's about weaving the language into things you already love.
Absolutely. Make it a tool to explore your passions, not a separate chore.
What are some examples of how they do that, like connecting it to hobbies?
For sure. Machova points this out clearly. If someone loves, say, football, they won't start with chapter 1 of basic grammar. They'll jump straight into listening to match commentary in that language, reading sports news websites, watching player interviews.
Because they already know the context.
Exactly. They understand the game, the jargon in their own language. So learning it in a new language is much easier, more engaging. It builds on what they already know. Same for history buffs, documentaries, historical novels, foodies, cooking shows, recipe blogs in the target language.
Oh, I love that. Learning Italian by following an actual Italian cooking show. Or learning French by trying to decipher a recipe book.
Or if you're into politics, following news outlets from that country, you learn the language and get a different perspective on world events. The point is to make the language the vehicle for exploring something you're already fascinated by. It pulls you in naturally.
It stops being study and starts being discovery.
Precisely. You're not just learning words, you're learning about the world, about your interests through a new linguistic lens, and that's incredibly motivating.
So, for you listening, pause and really think. What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? Hobbies, interests, topics. Now, how can you use those as your gateway? Find a podcast, a YouTube channel, a forum, a blog related to that passion, but in the language you're learning, that built-in interest is your rocket fuel.
And that deep, meaningful engagement with one language, that's crucial before trying to add more. Which brings us neatly to the next habit.
Right. Habit number 5, they focus on one language at a time. Now, this might seem weird given they end up speaking lots of languages. Why focus on just one?
It seems counterintuitive, but it's incredibly strategic. Polyglots, especially when starting a new language, rarely try to juggle multiple new ones at the same time. They pour their energy into one until it becomes, well, stable.
Okay, what does stable mean here?
Stable means they can use it pretty comfortably, fairly fluently, without constantly mixing it up with other languages they know. They've built a solid foundation they can understand reasonably well, express themselves effectively for their needs.
And focusing helps them get there faster.
Much faster. Think about your brain's processing power, your attention. It's limited, right? By dedicating all that mental energy to one linguistic system at a time, They learn its patterns, its sounds, its structures more deeply and quickly. It reduces interference, that feeling of getting words or grammar mixed up between languages.
Like trying to build two houses at once.
Exactly. You might end up with two weak foundations instead of one strong one. Build one solid base first, get it to a comfortable level, then think about starting the next. It's about sequential mastery, not simultaneous dabbling.
That makes a lot of sense. I know many learners, myself included when I started, get all excited and want to learn French and Spanish and German all at once.
The common urge, you feel like you're being super productive.
Yeah. But what you're saying and what the source stresses is that this deep, singular focus, especially at the beginning, is actually way more effective in the long run for reaching real fluency.
It really is. You get one language to a point where it's almost automatic, where you don't have to consciously think about every single word. Then you have the mental space, the solid base to add another without causing chaos in your brain.
So for you listening, resist that temptation to spread yourself too thin. Especially if you're a beginner or haven't reached that stable point in your current target language. Focus your energy. Get one language to a comfortable, confident level. Then you can think about adding number 2 or 3.
Yeah, once you're focused on that one language, what becomes the main goal? It's not just collecting words.
No, it leads right into habit 6. They prioritize real communication, listening and speaking, getting the message across.
This is such a departure from a lot of traditional methods.
Totally. School often feels like it's all about grammar drills, memorizing verb tables, vocabulary lists, often totally disconnected from actually talking to someone. It makes you scared to open your mouth.
Exactly. Polyglots flip that.
Yeah.
They understand through experience that the real point of language is understanding others and being understood. Comprehension and expression.
Yeah.
That's the heart of it. Not achieving grammatical perfection on paper.
And mistakes.
Mistakes are not just okay, they're essential. They're embraced. They're seen as data, feedback, learning opportunities. It's like learning to ride a bike. You don't study physics diagrams for months first.
No, you get on, you wobble, you probably fall off.
You fall, you scrape your knee, you get back on. You learn by doing, by getting that real-world feedback. Making mistakes in speaking is the scraped knee of language learning. It shows you where the edge is, what needs adjusting.
That's a great analogy. So practically speaking, how do they prioritize communication day to day?
They try to speak early and often, even if it's just simple stuff, broken sentences. They listen intently, not just to words, but to the music of the language, the rhythm, the intonation, and they try to imitate it. They actively seek out conversations like we mentioned before, exchange partners, tutors, meetups, even just talking to themselves.
Narrating their day.
Sure. Okay, now I'm making coffee. I need milk. It sounds silly, maybe, but it activates the language. The goal isn't perfect sentences right away. It's getting comfortable, producing sounds, making connections, being understood, function over flawless form.
But that fear is real. The fear of sounding stupid, making mistakes, it can be paralyzing.
It absolutely can. Many traditional methods almost cultivate that fear, weirdly enough. But polyglots recognize that fear is the enemy of progress. They consciously push past it. They know that every mistake is just information. Okay, that word order didn't work, or, they didn't understand my pronunciation there. You learn, you adjust.
It's an iterative process.
Exactly. That feedback loop, try something, get feedback, even if it's just a confused look. Adjust, try again. That's what drives learning forward way faster than just studying rules in a vacuum. They avoid getting stuck in that silent period where you know a lot about the language, but are terrified to actually use it.
So for you listening, try to shift your mindset. Focus on connection, not perfection. Embrace the wobbles, the mistakes. Start small. Try ordering that coffee, asking for directions. Aim to be understood, not to be flawless. People usually appreciate the effort way more than they judge the errors.
And that drive to communicate, to use the language, is usually fueled by a very specific reason.
Which brings us to habit 7. They use the language according to their purpose. They know why they're learning it.
This sounds simple, almost obvious, right? But it's incredibly powerful for efficiency.
It's about defining your personal why. Why this language? Why now? And then letting that answer guide everything else.
Precisely. Polyglots are crystal clear on their main motivation. Is it for travel? For work? To read certain books? To connect with family? That clarity acts like a filter. It helps them decide what vocabulary is essential, what grammar points are crucial for them, what skills to prioritize. It stops them wasting time on stuff that's irrelevant to their actual goal.
Because without that why, you could just drift aimlessly.
Exactly. You end up learning random bits and pieces, maybe getting bored because it doesn't feel useful, and then you burn out. If your goal is just basic tours conversation, Do you really need to master the subjunctive mood in week 2? Probably not.
Right. Or if you want to read complex novels, focusing only on ordering food isn't going to get you there either.
Exactly. The purpose dictates the path.
Can you give some examples from the source? How does this purpose-driven approach look different for different goals?
Sure. Machová gives great contrasts. Say your goal is travel. Just navigating, ordering, basic chat. Your focus will be super practical. Listening skills for noisy environments, key phrases, understanding directions. You won't sweat the small stuff grammatically if it doesn't impede basic communication. Materials, freeze books, travel guides, maybe YouTube travel vlogs in the language.
Okay, versus someone who wants to read literature.
Totally different ballgame. Their focus shifts. They'll need a much larger passive vocabulary. They'll dig into nuances of meaning, maybe study literary devices, learn about historical context. They'll spend way more time reading extensively, perhaps using those parallel texts we talked about. Less focus on spontaneous speaking, more on deep comprehension of written texts.
And for work, like business.
Again, a different focus. Maybe industry-specific jargon is key. Formal email etiquette.
Yeah.
Presentation skills, understanding cultural nuances in negotiation. Their materials might be business reports, news articles about the economy, maybe even role-playing client meetings.
So the beauty is it makes the learning hyper-relevant.
Intensely relevant and useful. It strips away the fluff. You're learning precisely what you need to achieve your specific goal. It's about working smarter, targeting your efforts.
So for you listening, take a real moment. Get honest. Why are you learning this language? What is your #1 primary goal? Travel, family, work, media. Brain challenge. Nail that down. Then let that why be your compass. Let it guide your choices about resources, skills, time allocation.
And having that clear purpose, knowing why you're doing it, makes it much, much easier to find the fun in it.
Ah, yes. Leading perfectly to habit 8. They make learning fun and motivating. This isn't optional, is it? It's essential.
Absolutely essential. Not a luxury, but a core component of their strategy.
Which is so refreshing because often learning gets framed as this, disciplined, maybe even slightly painful process, something you should do. But polyglots actively seek out the joy.
They absolutely do. They understand that enjoyment is the fuel for long-term motivation and consistency. Simple as that. When it feels like play, like a hobby you love, rather than homework you dread, you just naturally keep doing it.
And there's a brain science aspect too, right? Positive emotions help learning.
Definitely. When you're enjoying something, feeling curious, connected, amused, your brain is more receptive. It actually helps consolidate memories, strengthen those neural pathways. Learning literally sticks better when it feels good. It transforms the effort into desire.
That's powerful. So what kind of fun things do they do? How do they inject this joy?
All sorts of ways. The source mentions watching comedies, for example. Laughing in another language, that's a real connection. Understanding the humor, the timing. Or listening to music, trying to catch lyrics, singing along. Music is amazing for rhythm, pronunciation, memorizing phrases.
Yeah, getting a song stuck in your head is pretty effective memorization.
It really is. And beyond just consuming media, they do interactive things. Language games could be apps, websites, even actual board games with native speakers.
Oh, fun.
And a big one, actively making friends, talking to people from that culture, just chatting about life. That social connection makes it real, human, inherently rewarding. It stops being about practicing grammar and starts being about connecting with someone.
It shifts the whole frame.
Really. It's about finding things that spark positive feelings. Curiosity, laughter, connection, satisfaction. If you genuinely look forward to your language time, you'll stick with it, even when it gets tough. It's the antidote to burnout.
So, for you listening, actively hunt for the fun. Don't just do what you think you ought to do. What would make you smile? What would feel like play? Watch cartoons. Read comics. Follow meme accounts in that language. Play video games. Find your fun and weave it into your routine.
And that fun makes it easier to maintain the next crucial habit.
Habit 9. They practice regularly, not occasionally. Consistency. The slow and steady wins the race approach.
Absolutely. This is the powerhouse habit, really. Consistency trumps intensity every single time in language learning. Short, daily sessions beat long, infrequent cramming marathons. Hands down.
It's that compound effect idea, right? Small bits adding up.
Exactly. Like saving a little money every day versus trying to save a big chunk once a month. Those small daily deposits of effort, even just 10, 15, 20 minutes, build incredible momentum over time. Polyglots get this. They build language into their daily rhythm, making it a habit like brushing their teeth.
Not necessarily finding more time, but using the time they have differently.
Precisely. Those little micro moments, repeated daily, lead to massive improvement. Way more than studying for 3 hours every other Saturday. It keeps the language fresh, active in your mind, reinforcing connections constantly.
So what do these micro moments look like? We touched on podcasts during commutes. What else?
Yeah, commutes are classic, but also maybe reviewing vocabulary during a coffee break. Instead of scrolling social media, 5 minutes with flashcards on an app like Anki,
Productive procrastination.
kind of, or listening to an audiobook while cooking or cleaning. Or, as we mentioned, journaling, writing just 2 or 3 sentences about your day before bed, in the target language, obviously.
They have to be a novel.
Not at all. The point is the consistent engagement,
Eh.
at touching the language every single day, even briefly. It keeps the neural pathways active. It's not about finding huge blocks of time, which most of us don't have. It's about optimizing those little spaces within your existing routine.
So the challenge for you listening is to find those slots. Where are your 5, 10, 15 minutes? Morning coffee, lunch break, waiting for the bus, before bed. Identify them and then make a conscious choice to fill 1 or 2 of them with language practice. Make it automatic, a non-negotiable part of your day.
And that consistency works best when it's directed towards something specific.
Which brings us to the final habit, number 10. They set clear, measurable goals. This ties everything together. It gives all the other habits direction.
Exactly. This is where the strategic thinking really shines. It's not just, I want to learn Spanish. That's way too vague. It's a wish, not a goal.
So they get specific, like SMART goals.
Very much so. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. They treat language learning like a personal project, a mission with clear objectives. This provides focus, lets them track their progress, which is hugely motivating, and gives them that amazing feeling of accomplishment when they hit a target.
Because seeing progress fuels more effort.
Absolutely. It creates a positive feedback loop. Wow, I actually achieved that mini goal. Okay, what's next? It breaks down the enormous task of learning a language into manageable steps. It keeps momentum going, especially when you hit those inevitable plateaus.
Can you give some examples of these SMART goals from the source? What does a good language goal look like?
Sure. Instead of speak better, maybe it's be able to hold a 10-minute conversation with my language partner about my hobbies within 2 months. C. Specific topic, measurable duration, achievable time frame, relevant if conversation is the goal, and time-bound.
Okay, clear target. What about writing?
Instead of just read a book, maybe read 1 chapter of Harry Potter in German per week for the next month. Or finish reading this specific short story collection by X date, define scope, define timeline.
And maybe something like watching movies.
A great one is be able to watch my favorite sitcom, like Friends or whatever, in French with French subtitles and understand 80% of it by the end of the year. Or eventually watch a movie I know well without any subtitles by December. That's concrete. You know exactly what you're aiming for.
And hitting that would feel amazing.
Totally. It shows real progress in a tangible way. These goals turn the marathon of language learning into a series of achievable, rewarding sprints. Each finish line crossed builds confidence and makes the next stage feel less daunting.
So, for you listening, time to get specific. Don't just drift. Define your targets. What exactly do you want to be able to do with the language and by when? Write it down. Make it smart. Want to understand song lyrics? Order confidently on vacation. Follow a news podcast. Set clear, measurable milestones. It will give your practice direction and make your progress visible.
And those 10 habits working together, the mindset shift, personalization, autonomy, meaningful materials, focus, communication priority, purpose, fun, consistency, and goals. That's the polyglot path.
Right. So, wrapping this all up then, what we've really unpacked today, digging into Lýdia Machová's work and the experiences of polyglots, is that these habits, they're not secrets locked away for the talented.
Not at all. They are practical.
Yeah.
They are actionable, strategies anyone can adopt. And the biggest takeaway, the fundamental shift, language learning isn't some fixed talent you're born with. It is absolutely a skill you can develop, practice, and improve. It's within reach.
And what strikes me is how these habits go beyond just learning languages. The source calls them lessons in self-discipline, creativity, and lifelong learning. And it's true, isn't it?
Absolutely. Think about it.
Personalizing your approach, taking ownership, finding joy in the process, setting clear goals, being consistent, pushing past fear. These are life skills. Applying these doesn't just make you better at Spanish or Japanese, it makes you a more empowered person overall. More adaptable, more capable of tackling any complex challenge.
It really is a framework for mastering difficult things, language just being one example.
So the message is becoming multilingual. It is possible for you. whether you want to travel, boost your career, connect with culture, or just stretch your brain. The path involves curiosity, consistency, and taking control, making it yours, making it fun.
Embrace that process.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. If the real secret to mastering multiple languages isn't about innate ability, but about these deliberate, enjoyable, consistent habits, what else that seems impossible might you be able to achieve by applying these same principles? What other mountains, what other skills that you thought were only for the talented are actually just processes waiting for you to discover, to own, and to master?
Something to definitely think about.
That's all for this deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.